And of course, as we promised you at the beginning of the show, that we'll be crossing live to my colleague Francis Hurd, who is standing by for us at the World Science Forum. Francis, it's been quite the day for you. You've been on that floor for the rest of the day. Talk to us about today. I mean, these proceedings quite critical. Science for social justice.
So this is a big event, Bongiwe. I spoke to the Minister, Bladen Zemande, earlier. You are right. He says this is the biggest event, or it's one of the biggest, at least, if not the biggest event during his tenure. So he said, forget about Phala Phala and let's focus on what's happening here. The World Science Forum being held in Cape Town here at the Convention Centre. And the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, will be part of the opening ceremony tonight. And I can tell you, Bongiwe, there's been a lot of interest in his attendance because it will be the first formal event after the crisis surrounding the release of that expert panel report. I don't think he's going to talk about Phala Phala at all. It's about the science, although many South Africans are interested in the science of cattle farming of late, it must be said. But like you said, Bongiwe, this is about science for social justice. That is the theme. And by the way, this science forum is held every 2 years in different parts of the world. This is the first time it's being held on African soil. So it really is an opportunity to look at where the gaps are, where Africa has been left behind, where the innovation is, how we catch up. There will be a bit of focus on Africa itself, but this is for global scientists, and I've heard many different languages and accents. There are people from all over the world here. And just to give you a taste of some of the themes, what role for science in fighting poverty, unemployment, inequality and exclusion. So these are real life issues, very important in South Africa. Where does the science fit in? And responding to pandemics, we'll talk about that. COVID-19 really highlighting the need for change, the need for science skills to be built up in Africa particularly. So the Department of Science and Innovation is involved in this from a South African side. The UN is here, several countries, universities from all over the world. But let's hear from the DSI. I spoke to the Director General, Dr. Phil Mjwara, earlier, and we spoke about this concept, firstly, of taking science out of labs. It's not always high-level thinking. We know it saves lives, but how can it become practical and touch lives on the ground? Let's take a listen.
There are a number of examples on the portfolio that we have in the science and innovation in South Africa. We, for instance, sitting around here before a talk that the minister will be launching on hydrogen and the skills that are needed for the hydrogen green economy, which I think you covered very well last week. If you think about that, it's about converting a chemical process and producing electricity. So that's what science is, and then we have been over a long period of time investing in this process of converting chemical hydrogen into electricity for a long time, and we have now deployed these in some of the rural areas. In KZN, we are deploying these hydrogen fuel cells and providing energy in those areas where the grid cannot reach. So this is just
so it's already working, that's what you're saying?
Yes, it's working. In fact, on the day when we were going to have a discussion with the Ugu municipality on the day, we had load shedding at the start of the meeting, and the meeting continued because it was powered by the fuel cell that we have produced in South Africa. So that's one classic example, but I'm sure within the portfolio of what we do in the Department of Science and Innovation, we can give you that. The second example is through something which we call Innovation Fund. We've been funding a community working with the University of Limpopo that is looking at whether you can take marula as a fruit and then produce a very, very sophisticated wine. We are fairly close to producing that wine with this community now. You can imagine how the lives of these communities will change when they start to export this marula fruit wine to the rest of the world. So I think we can give you practical examples of how science at a practical level can change people's lives.
Those are great examples. But this isn't only about South Africa. It's a global event. It's held every 2 years. What is the significance of the World Science Forum and the World Science Forum being held in Africa for the first time?
Well, the first one is that quite often, as you just asked me the question, there is sometimes very little awareness in general public that science is close to our lives. So this event, it moves all over the world. It's about talking about science to ordinary people, or those things that affect ordinary people. As you know, the theme for this one is science for social justice. How do we use science to address social justice? For an example, in South Africa, we have gender-based violence, and how can we use science to understand what are the real causes of gender-based violence? That's just one example. You are aware that during COVID it was difficult to get data and being able to understand how the virus was mutating because there's something which we call data democracy. Sometimes data that is available elsewhere that can be used in South Africa to solve, for instance, how we can use our vaccine and how vaccine is effective to the variant. It's not readily available. So it's just a global discussion around what are those aspects of science that really need to be removed so that we can have a benefit to society. And then the second reason is that we hope that we will showcase to the rest of the world and the scientific community our science prowess in South Africa. Yesterday we went to show a couple of journalists and international guests our square kilometer array in Carnarvon, and around here they will have an opportunity to see a number of science institutions that are located here in the Western Cape.
So you mentioned COVID-19, the inequality that we saw. How is this practical in terms of overcoming those gaps? We saw the developed world hoarding vaccines, and in a sense, South Africa and the rest of Africa caught napping, perhaps.
Well, the luck for South Africa is that the World Health Organization, together with a number of international partners, realized that there is this gap in Africa in terms of producing our own vaccines and medicines. And as you know, because of the president and his request to the rest of the world to have an IP waiver, we now have an mRNA hub here in Cape Town, Afrigen, in a number of universities, and BioVac, which is a state-owned company, where we will, in the next 3-4 years, we'll be producing our own mRNA vaccine, not only for COVID. There are a number of vaccines that we buy as part of the vaccination program, which is based on this mRNA platform, as it is called. So COVID, perhaps at that time, we were unlucky not to have the vaccines on time, but I think like every silver cloud that has a lining, we now will be able to produce this mRNA vaccine, not only for South Africa, but for the rest of the world, because the mRNA hub also has the opportunity to train other countries in the continent, South America, and other low-middle income countries. So yes, we were unlucky at the time, but this has given South Africa and other low-medium income countries an opportunity to develop their own capabilities for the future.
All right, so we've come back to the convention centre here in Cape Town, where the World Science Forum is being held on African soil for the first time. That was the Director General of the Department of Science and Innovation. And I have with me also from the department, Mampay Chaba, Chief Director Multilateral Cooperation and Africa from the DSI. Welcome to you. And also from UNESCO, the UN body, Shamila Nair Badwell, and she will actually be involved in the opening ceremony shortly about to happen with the President and the Hungarian President as well. So let me start with you. Mampay, we were told that you are the driving force behind this. I mean, what sort of organization goes into something like this? Scientists from across the world coming. And I think it's a showcase for South Africa as well, right?
What an honor this has been for South Africa to host the first World Science Forum in the African continent. It's been brilliant preparing for the forum. We currently have 2,300 registered delegates from all over the world. We have over 140 speakers that will speak on various topics related to science for social justice, supported by the many partners that have come from all over the world, with a total of 350 sponsored delegates. So we try to be as inclusive as possible. The sponsored delegates are young people, unemployed STEM graduates, unemployed science journalists that are looking for opportunities. So they, with this occasion, are receiving that opportunity. But we are so excited because the issues that will be discussed are to solve South Africa and the continent's pertinent questions.
So all the clever people in the world are here at the moment.
One can say that, yes.
All right, Shanila, we won't keep you long because I know that you're going to be involved in the opening. But just talk about this theme, science for social justice. And I think maybe we can touch on COVID-19 because there we realized, okay, science saved lives. The consensus is that vaccines save lives. But there was also some controversy because governments were maybe using the science to undermine democratic rights. I see that even these are some of the debates that will be held here.
Thank you. I think UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, promotes international scientific collaboration and international scientific solidarity across the world. Our role is to promote science for peace. And access to science, technology, and innovation is a human right. We cannot have science for social justice if we do not have access to science, readily available access to science. That is why UNESCO is promoting the theme of open science. South Africa's scientific prowess is well recognized in the world, and South Africa drafted the genome, the Omicron genome, and this saved millions of lives across the world. So we need to trust in science. We must believe in science. Science for social justice also means a scientific humanism to the approach to science. We want to make science more available, readily accessible to the world at large, and reduce this knowledge gap between nations. We want there's equity, inclusivity, that women have access to science, that youth have access to science. And that's the role of the World Science Forum in partnership with UNESCO. And I want to sincerely thank the government of South Africa for teaming up in organizing this exceptional science for social justice, which is the theme of our world today. In the economic, climate crisis, water crisis, we cannot not recognize science for social justice.
So that's beautiful. Give me some practical things that may come out of this. I mean, all the things you've spoken about, South Africa faces a water crisis, a power crisis, and for the African continent, I think you're quite passionate about closing that gap that we saw in terms of science and innovation when it came to making vaccines, for example.
Okay. In terms of making vaccines, UNESCO has now approved, UNESCO 93 members have approved the Open Science Recommendation. And the Open Science Recommendation will allow science to move beyond borders, paywalls, and patents, promoting this international scientific solidarity in sharing of scientific data. So that's concerning science, technology, and innovation. UNESCO is also promoting access to technologies for disaster risk management. For example, installing early warning floods and drought systems across the world and especially in Africa. And we're also promoting now the first time access to technologies to harvest groundwater, because the remedy to the water crisis is under our feet, how to make the invisible visible. This is through access to science, technology, and innovation. And this is UNESCO's mandate. And we will launch tomorrow the Groundwater Summit in Paris, UNESCO headquarters, bringing world ministers together on water to debate the role of groundwater and access to groundwater technologies.
So it's about sharing knowledge, basically.
It's about sharing knowledge, sharing scientific knowledge and information, and ensuring that no one is left behind. In the true spirit of open science, the government of South Africa organizes a World Science Forum on different themes to share scientific information, to provide a platform for scientists, policymakers, academia, civil society to engage in science. We need all of society to be part of the scientific dialogue. Science for social justice means also science for the environment and social justice for the environment.
All right, well, thank you for being part of this, and we'll let you go because Shamela Nair-Bedell from UNESCO is going to be part of the opening ceremony. So you may leave us, but we really appreciate the chat tonight. And I continue with Mampay Chaba from the Department of Science and Innovation. And I guess for not only South Africa, but all African countries, that idea of sharing knowledge so nobody gets left behind is an exciting thing.
Extremely so. For Africa, we are the underdeveloped countries, and science is the key driver for development. If we are to reach the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, science is one of the means of implementation for supporting achievement of the SDGs. So in the sessions during the course of this week, we have a theme on science for Africa. How can scientists in Africa be involved? How can they input into the research agenda? But most importantly, how can science benefit the African continent? So a lot of the delegates that are here are from the continent, the researchers. We have the African Academy of Sciences that has brought in over 200 delegates, mostly renowned African scientists who will debate on the issues, who will also speak from an African context, so that the forum at the end with the Cape Town Declaration calls political leaders to action, calls scientists to do responsible research, but most importantly to think about citizens, so that the science that is conducted has an impact to society.
So what is the importance of that declaration? Is that something that then countries or scientists should hold themselves to?
For every World Science Forum, we develop and adopt a declaration. And for the Cape Town Declaration, we really are looking at how it can speak to the issues of Ubuntu, about sharing, about caring, about thinking about a fellow human being, and how we can garner all the international scientists